My wife pinged from Rome. Just married my assistant. You're archaic, by the way. I replied. Interesting. Then I blocked her accounts and changed the dig site access. Next morning, police were at my base camp. It was 2:47 a.m. when the satellite ping came through. High frequency, priority override. I was half asleep in my tent, somewhere deep in the Peruvian Andes, miles from the nearest cell tower. The ping cut through the stillness like a bullet. I sat up, bleary-eyed, fumbling for the receiver clipped to my pack. The message wasn't coded. It was personal. There she was. Elise, my wife of 6 years, smiling like a stranger. Her hair was windblown, her cheeks flushed. And beside her, Marco, my assistant, grinning with the kind of arrogance I used to find charming before I started footing his per diem. They were holding an obviously fake Incan marriage plaque, ceramic, souvenir-grade junk. The caption was what did it. Hitched to Marco. Been drilling behind your back for 8 months. You're a fossil. Enjoy the solitude. I stared at the image for a long minute. No emotion. Just a click behind the eyes. Like a file had been accessed. Then I typed back. Interesting. That was it. She'd done me a favor, really. Saved me the trouble of playing nice at the Rome Symposium. Saved me from wasting another second pretending we had anything left but tax forms. Marco had potential once. Smart kid, full of big ideas and shaky ethics. Elise loved that. Said he reminded her of me back when I still believed discovery was the goal, not reputation. I laid back down on my cot for a few minutes, listening to the wind whip through the dig tents. Then I got up, fired up the generator, opened the secure systems console. By 3:10, Elise's university access was revoked. At 3:25, I changed the satellite uplink credentials. Every scan, every contour map, every ounce of data collected over the last 9 months was now routed to my private server. At 4 a.m., I terminated her travel grant. Every dollar tied to our joint research proposal, rerouted. She'd wake up in a Rome hotel room to a canceled credit card and a dozen authorization failures. And Marco? His stipend ended with one click. The poor bastard would be scouring cheap flights home by noon. By dawn, the camp's communication network had been scrubbed. I logged her out of our field reporting software, reset all passwords, and rerouted our logistic accounts to a new alias. She wanted to play dirty? She'd forgotten who handled the tools, the permits, the money. She married Marco for excitement. But I built this empire with a cold hand and a ledger, and I was just getting started. By the time the sun had fully crested the ridge, I was in the camp's operations trailer, the only place with a decent signal and a reinforced door. I brewed myself a cup of instant coffee and watched the slow spin of the satellite dish outside, knowing Elise and Marco were probably just waking up to the consequences. I started with the university systems. Our expedition was funded under a joint proposal, her name second, mine first. That gave me administrative control. A couple of keystrokes and the back-end access was all mine. Elise's email bounced when she tried to log into the shared archive. Marco's credentials were flagged and locked. Every folder she thought she'd backed up to her cloud account was gone, overwritten with timestamped encrypted blocks. Even the drafts she'd left in our publishing portal were inaccessible. The university would think it was a bug until the IT audit showed what really happened. Then came the containers. Every expedition supply locker, research container, and mobile field lab ran on biometric and code-based access. We'd upgraded after the last break-in. Ironically, Elise had insisted on the multi-level security. I changed every code before breakfast. She could bang on them all she wanted. They weren't opening without my fingerprint now. At 9:15, I sent an internal memo to our grant liaison, citing unauthorized credential usage by a remote collaborator. The language was dry, professional, but it said what needed to be said. Elise had falsified travel documents, claimed seminar expenses for locations she never visited, and had someone else, Marco, no doubt, logging in from multiple devices under her name. I attached screenshots, logs, timestamps. I knew the university's ethics board wouldn't act fast, but the paper trail had begun. By mid-morning, Elise's university ID was flagged for audit. Her travel card, which I had co-signed, was frozen by the issuer. Marco's was deactivated outright. No room service. No airport taxi. No business class return flight. Not on my dime. I walked the perimeter of the site and spoke to our local security staff. Quiet guys. Loyal. I told them, calmly, that if either Elise or Marco tried to enter the compound, they were to be turned away. No drama. Just protocol. And that was the beauty of it. No shouting. No theatrics. Just quiet clicks. Access denied. The officers showed up just after noon, just as I was logging soil sample data into the archive. I saw the dust trail before I heard the engine, a slow approach up the winding path that led to our base camp. 2 men in khaki uniforms stepped out of a dented pickup with government plates and the emblem of the local prefecture stenciled on the door. One of them was older, the other looked barely out of school. Both had that look, not hostile, but stiff, like they'd been sent into someone else's mess and were hoping to make it back to town before the rain hit. "Senor Conrad Gallagher?" the older one asked, pulling a folded paper from his jacket. I nodded, motioned toward the shaded table by the generator shack. "Coffee?" They declined. "Of course. We received a formal complaint," the young one added, glancing at the paper. "From a woman named Elise Marconi. She states you locked her out of shared property and possibly misused joint expedition funds." I didn't flinch. I simply handed them the tablet I'd been working on. One swipe, and the photo popped up, Elise and Marco, smiling like newlyweds, holding that stupid faux marriage plaque. I tapped to enlarge the timestamp in the upper corner. Then I opened the log history, their access attempts, the flagged credentials, the location discrepancies. It took them less than 5 minutes to get the picture. The older officer grunted, handed the tablet back. "We see this is complicated. From what we reviewed, no criminal action on your part. She'll need to pursue any further issues through civil channels." I nodded once. As they walked back to their truck, their radios crackled. It was faint, but clear enough. A woman's voice, angry, rapid-fire Italian. My name screamed into static. The younger officer turned, half smirking. "I think she expected you'd be surprised." I met his eyes. She always underestimated the quiet ones. They drove off. I went back to my data. I heard them before I saw them, a burst of laughter, sharp footsteps crunching gravel, the scrape of an overstuffed suitcase being dragged across the rocks. Elise was back, and she brought reinforcements. They came over the ridge like a bizarre diplomatic party, Elise in designer hiking boots and a windbreaker too clean for field work, Marco trailing behind her with a sunburned neck and the look of a man who hadn't slept well in days. Beside them was Professor Corrado, her mentor from Florence, a thick-skulled bureaucrat with an ego the size of the Andes. And last, stopping toward the tents like a man looking for a fight, was Elise's brother, Gabriel. I didn't stand to greet them. I stayed seated on a plastic crate outside the field lab, reviewing drone footage on my tablet. If they wanted a showdown, they could initiate it. "Elise Marconi," I said calmly, not even glancing up. "Back from Rome so soon?" "Cut the smug act, Conrad," she snapped, her Italian accent sharper than usual. "You've sabotaged my career. You had no right to freeze my accounts." Marco flinched beside her. He looked thin, regretful. I almost pitied him. "You forged logs. You falsified location data. You accessed expedition systems using credentials assigned to someone else," I said flatly. "That's not sabotage. That's enforcement. You think this little digital coup will hold?" Corrado interjected, puffing out his chest. "I'm prepared to notify the funding committee in Florence. This entire operation could be shut down." I looked up then. That's bold. Especially considering I've archived 14 emails between you and Elise, dated during the proposal review period, discussing personal favor structures tied to grant disbursement. His expression dropped like a stone. "You have no authority to—" "I'm sure the ethics board will decide that," I said, assuming they finish reading the attachments I sent this morning. Gabriel stepped forward, veins popping in his neck. "You think you're untouchable? You humiliate my sister and think we'll just watch?" I held his gaze. "Your sister's camp gear is boxed up behind the mess tent, along with Marco's. I've arranged for it to be carted to the nearest bus depot by sunset." Elise's lips trembled. "You vindictive bastard. You think this is a win? You've made enemies." "No," I said. "I've made boundaries." Marco finally spoke, voice low, eyes darting away from hers. "Elise, maybe we should just go." She looked at him like he'd slapped her. "You're giving up?" "He's right," he muttered. "We lost." I stood then, slow and deliberate. "You played a long game, Elise. But you forgot the first rule of field work." She stared, teeth clenched. "Control the site," I said. "Control the story." She didn't reply, just stood there, fist clenched, as the boxes were hauled away. Her kingdom reduced to luggage and echoes. The first post went up 3 days later. A black and white selfie of Elise, looking appropriately tired and poetic, with a caption that read, "Emotional abuse doesn't always leave bruises. Sometimes it just erases you." It got over 800 likes in the first 12 hours. She followed it up with a string of vague subtweets and thinly veiled Instagram stories about surviving narcissists and healing from years of control. The hashtags told the real story. Hashtag gaslight survivor, hashtag academic misogyny, hashtag fossil heart. A few of our mutual colleagues shared it. Some even commented, "Stay strong," and "You deserve peace." I could practically hear her typing through gritted teeth, crafting the perfect narrative. Control-freak husband, obsessed with ancient bones, emotionally unavailable. She was reclaiming her story, reinventing herself as the victim. The brave truth-teller who'd finally escaped the icy clutches of an academic tyrant. It might have worked, too, if I hadn't come prepared. I reached out to Danny, one of our tech staff who used to handle the backup servers. She'd always had a sharp sense of justice and a grudge against Elise after some past condescension. By the end of the day, we had a clean export of Elise's private chat logs. Not just work messages, all of it. Slack threads, WhatsApp backups, even an old shared Notion page where she'd listed out a long-term exit strategy from our marriage, complete with budget projections, potential job transfers, and a section titled, "Can I take Marco seriously?" But the real gold was in the screenshots. Elise bragging to Marco about bleeding funds from my travel account. Joking that Conrad's too busy dating skeletons to notice a warm body in his bed. A voice note where she laughed, "I married him for the grant. The man himself is pre-Columbian furniture." I didn't need to say a word. Danny formatted everything into a clean PDF, posted a link with a single caption. Receipts. The tide turned in less than 24 hours. Comments disappeared from Elise's posts. A few of her academic allies quietly deleted their shares. One even messaged me privately. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." By the weekend, Elise had turned off comments. Her tone shifted from righteous survivor to vague sadness. Some people are just really good at playing the victim. Lesson learned. But nobody was buying it anymore. I didn't gloat. I didn't reply. I let the evidence speak. She tried to rewrite the story. I just published the footnotes. The next move was Elise's father. He called the university's research office directly, bypassing admin, claimed I was harassing his daughter, said I'd emotionally traumatized her to the point of instability. The secretary who took the call happened to be someone I'd helped get her son an internship the year before. She forwarded the message to me with a note. He sounded frantic. I flagged it. "But you're in the clear. Don't worry." The university dismissed the complaint before lunch. Elise didn't take the hint. That night, at precisely 2:08 a.m., the motion sensors near the outer dig zone sent a ping to my watch. I pulled up the feed on my tablet. There she was, Elise, in the same white windbreaker, hair wild, barefoot, shouting into the darkness. "I know there's more," she screamed. "You don't get to keep it all, you selfish bastard. It's not just yours." She tried prying open the corner storage shed, the one we used for artifact overflow, and yanked on the handle until the security light snapped on. She stumbled back, shielding her eyes, muttering about ancestral heirlooms and intellectual theft. By the time the guards reached her, she'd curled up beside the generator, sobbing into her knees. In the morning, I reviewed the footage and emailed it to the ethics board, CCing the security firm and my lawyer. I labeled it Unauthorized Entry Attempt, Subject E. Marconi. That afternoon, I got a voicemail from her. Not angry, not smug, just exhausted. She mumbled something about misunderstanding, about her work being stolen, about not feeling seen. I didn't respond. Then she tried my mother. Called her out of the blue, a woman she'd only ever made small talk with at holidays, and sobbed her way through some performance about mistakes and being human. I found out later from my mom, who called me the next day just to tell me what she'd said. I asked what she told Elise. My mom was quiet for a moment, then said, "I told her, you study betrayal for a living. Now live your thesis." I almost smiled. Elise was spiraling, fabricating new angles with each failed attack. Research theft, cultural violation, emotional distress, even a wild accusation about a research cat that supposedly disappeared from our dig camp, a cat that never existed. Every move she made only confirmed what I already knew. She had nothing left to hold on to except the story she told herself. And the world was done listening. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice was unmistakably maternal, just not Elise's. "Conrad," the woman asked, sounding breathless, like she'd been debating whether to make the call at all. "This is Rosa, Marco's mother." I leaned back in my chair. I wasn't surprised, just amused. "Marco's not doing well," she said carefully. "He's overwhelmed. And Elise, she's intense. She's not the girl he thought she was." I stayed silent. She continued, "I'm calling because, well, I know things ended badly, but perhaps you could forgive. Maybe take her back? She was your wife, after all." That did it. I laughed. A full, sharp laugh that startled even me. "You want me to what?" I asked. "Please," she said quickly. "Marco can't support her. She's draining him. He's miserable. And you want to send her back to me like I'm a Goodwill donation center." I cut in. "Sorry, that store's closed. I just thought," she tried again, "you might be the bigger man." I exhaled, my voice flat. "You were wrong." Then I hung up. A few hours later, I got a message on my satellite account. No name, just a random ID and one line of text. "You destroyed me." I stared at it for a second, then typed my reply. "Thriving, thanks." I hit send. No follow-up. No second message. Nothing. That was the last time Elise ever contacted me directly. Even her final attempt, a guilt-soaked, dramatic stab in the dark, landed with the same thud as every other part of her collapse. She wasn't reaching out for forgiveness. She was fishing for a lifeline, and I wasn't on that boat anymore. Court was held in a concrete building off the Plaza de Armas in Cusco. Humid, high-altitude air seeped through the open windows. The judge looked bored before it even began. Elise arrived in full theater mode, wearing what she claimed was a traditional Andean bridal robe. It was bright, ceremonial, clearly rented, and completely out of place. She'd pinned her hair up like a local noblewoman from 1,000 years ago. I wondered if she thought playing cultural victim would win her points. She walked in with exaggerated grace, chin high, as if the whole courtroom was a documentary crew waiting to capture her triumph. When the judge asked for her statement, she launched into a speech. "I was coerced," she said, eyes wide, voice trembling. "Culturally, emotionally manipulated into a relationship I didn't understand. I was isolated from my field, my freedom. I only married Marco to escape psychological oppression." Even Marco, sitting 2 rows back, buried his face in his hands. Then it was my lawyer's turn. He stood without drama, just handed the judge a folder. Inside, over 60 pages of translated chat logs, emails, and field notes. All time-stamped, all meticulously sourced. Highlights included Elise coordinating secret flights with Marco, a spreadsheet budgeting their exit plan months before she ever left, multiple messages joking about Conrad being too fossilized to notice, and a note Elise had scribbled to herself. After the dig, drop him. The judge leafed through the pages in silence. After 15 minutes of quiet reading, he looked up. "Elise Marconi," he said in Spanish, "this is not coercion. This is a business arrangement you tried to walk out of with the profits." He slammed the folder shut. Divorce granted. Property awarded in full to Mr. Gallagher. Research rights and intellectual ownership transferred to him exclusively. Elise's jaw dropped. "But," he raised a hand, "you may keep your personal belongings. Nothing more." And, he added, flipping through the final page, "Given Mr. Gallagher's financial sponsorship of your academic program, which has now been voided due to ethical violations, the court awards him a modest monthly alimony payment to recoup part of that investment." It wasn't much, just a formality, but it was poetic. Elise turned bright red. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "He gets everything?" The judge didn't even look at her. Next case. As the bailiff escorted us out, Elise stood frozen in the courtroom, her Andean robe sagging around her like a deflated parade float. Outside, I shook my lawyer's hand and walked down the courthouse steps into the sharp midday sun. It was over. The thesis was dead. The lies were exposed. The marriage, null and void, like it had been written in sand. And Elise? All she had left were excuses and a robe she'd never earned. The video went viral 2 days after the hearing. It was grainy courthouse security footage, leaked by someone who clearly had a sense of humor. In it, Elise's former mentor, Professor Corrado, and Marco's mother, Rosa, were screaming at each other in front of the building. At one point, Rosa lunged forward and threw a cup of coffee directly at Corrado's chest. He slipped on the steps trying to dodge it and landed flat on his back. The clip was titled, "When the Puppeteers Turn on Each Other, Ink and Soap Opera Finale." Over 500,000 views. Reddit loved it. Marco was nowhere to be seen. Last I heard, he'd taken up with a young tourist he met at the so-called wedding in Rome. Rumors said she was 22, Belgian, and very into crystals. He'd gone off the grid, probably hoping no one recognized him when Elise's ethics investigation hit the European research boards. Elise's family disowned her quietly. Her father blocked her number. Her brother, Gabrielle, deleted every photo of her from his social media. Even her cousin, who once shared every post she made, removed her from his feed and followed me instead. That one was oddly satisfying. As for me, I didn't stay in Peru. I sold the dig site rights to a museum collective, one that valued clean records and low drama. The deal funded the rest of my outstanding research and left enough for a new place. I moved to a coastal loft in Monterey. Glass walls, ocean breeze, and no satellite pings at 2:47 a.m. The first morning I moved in, there was a knock on the door. Nadine stood there, smiling, holding 2 coffees. She was a marine biologist, lived 3 floors down. We'd met once at a conservation fundraiser Elise had dragged me to, years ago. Back then, I was background noise. Now, she was the one knocking. She handed me a cup with a smirk. On the lid, in black marker, she'd written, "Not Marco." I laughed for the first time in weeks. We started seeing each other slowly. Nadine was patient, curious, the opposite of everything Elise pretended to be. She asked about the dig, the fallout, the drama. I told her bits and pieces, enough for her to know I was done carrying it. One night, over drinks by the fire pit, she asked me what I would have done differently. I thought about it. The betrayal, the late-night strategies, the cold execution. "Nothing," I said. "Sometimes you have to lose the wrong people to find your own ground." She nodded, leaned her head against my shoulder. Elise had called me a fossil, but I hadn't crumbled. I just weathered the storm and come out carved into something sharper, stronger, and entirely my own.